Today's fairy tale is again about kidnapping mermaids, but also sassy lions and a princess that hates men. Surprise though, she gets over that. This is The Mermaid and the Boy, a Norwegian story collected by Andrew Lang in the Brown Fairy book, and it starts out kind of political. There's a king who's got some subjects on an island not where he lives. They have decided to revolt against his laws, so he has to travel there to settle the disputes. But on his way there, in his ship, there's suddenly tons of storms and their ship is gonna be crashed along the rocks and everyone's about to die. But a mermaid shows up. She's like, there's pretty much only one way you guys aren't gonna die today, and that's if you promise your firstborn son to me. Now, the king does not have a son yet, but he not only does not want to make this deal because he doesn't want to give up a future child because of like parental love. It says the thought that he must yield up the heir to his crown was very bitter to him, but he doesn't have a choice. They're gonna die. So he makes the promise, she saves them. He goes to this land, he settles the disputes, and he comes back home. While he was gone, surprise, his wife gave birth to a son, and he tells her everything, and they're both kind of sad about it, but years pass, and the mermaid doesn't take the son. Still, when he turns 16, the parents are both like, we think you need to like get out of here because this is where she's gonna come look for you. And the prince is excited. It said he's never like been let out of the palace grounds before. And he's like, ooh, I get to go do things on my own. So he ventures out and the first person he meets is a lion that he thinks is gonna eat him immediately. But the lion just goes, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm running away from a mermaid. And the lion's like, okay, cool, give me something to eat. So the kid gets out bread and a flask of wine and shares these things with the lion. The lion's like, I'm going to sleep. You can sleep beside me if you want. And so he does sleep next to the lion. In the morning, the lion's like, I have to be on my way, but since you were nice to me, you can cut off the tip of my ear and then keep it with you. And whenever you want, you can just turn into a lion. One good turn deserves another, and he apparently finds that equal to sharing wine. So the prince cuts off the tip of the ear, the lion leaves, and he tests it out, and he loves turning into a lion. It says what pleased him most was his long tail with a tuft at the end, which he lashed and swished proudly. I like being a lion very much, he said to himself, trotting gaily along the road. He goes on, and next he meets a bear, and again the bear's like, I'm hungry, give me food. He feeds the bear, they sleep together. In the morning, the bear does the same take the tip of my ear thing, you can turn into a bear. So when he tests out turning into a bear, he doesn't like it as much because the tail sucks. When he swished his tail, he found to his disgust it would not go the distance. Why, it is hardly worth calling a tail, said he. Of course, things happen in threes, so the third animal he meets is a bee, and the bee says, what are you doing here? He says, I'm running from a mermaid, and then it said the bee, like the lion and the bear, was one of those people who never listened to the answers to their questions. There are those people. So he just says, give me food, he shares his food with him, and then they sleep together, and then the bee says, you can have a hair from my wing and turn into a bee whenever you want. Our dude turns into a bee, goes along his way. He finally comes to this faraway kingdom where there is a princess who hates men. He hears from the people at court that she has such a hatred of men she would never suffer one to even enter her presence. Her dad has pictures painted of the handsomest princes in the world to give to her, and she won't even allow the pictures to come into her room. She's like, I don't even want to look at a man. And since men in these stories rarely respect consent or see women as actual people with feelings that they should respect, our dude turns into a bee and flies into her bedroom. He then immediately turns into a man, and as you might expect, she starts screaming, a man, a man! And then the guards rush in, but he's turned back into a bee, and they're like, there's no man here. They search everywhere. She doesn't know where he went. She didn't see him turn into the bee, and they're like, girl, there's no man here. We're also assuming the guards are men. I guess she's okay with them. So they leave, and then the dude turns into a man again. She screams again. He turns back into the bee. The guards come in, and the second time, they're just like, this girl's gone crazy. And they like decide amongst themselves, if she yells again, we're not coming back in here. This is ridiculous. And she knows that's what they've decided. So when they leave, she knows, oh crap, they're not coming back again. So when the bee turns back into the man again, she doesn't scream because she's like, it's not gonna help me. So she looks at him in frozen terror, but he says, don't be afraid. I love you. He starts to praise her gardens, which he heard the servants say she really loves. He's never actually seen them, but he's just heard she likes gardens. So he starts talking about her gardens. Eventually her anger softened and she answered him with gentle words, and she likes him so much, she's like, I might as well marry this guy. At least, you know, I like him and he could hurt me and he hasn't. Low bar, but you know. She's like, I totally want to marry you, but my dad's going to go away to war in like 3 days. And he's like, well, I'm going to go with your dad because, you know, I want to go be a part of the war. She's like, okay, we'll wait till you come back. And he says, By the way, if I don't come back, you should go play your violin, which apparently she has, as loud as you can at the edge of the ocean. Just trust me, that'll be helpful. So he sets off with the king, and there's this dude named the Red Knight who does not like him because he wants the princess. They get a little ways away, and the king's like, oh my god, I forgot my sword. It's in the princess's room. If any of you can go back and get into my daughter's room and get the sword for me, you get to marry my daughter. So our dude rushes back. He beats everyone by turning into a lion and scaring them, and then turns into the bee, gets the sword, and he's on his way back, and he's got it. But he's so thirsty on his way back that he has to stop and drink at a stream, and guess what? The mermaid pops out and grabs him and takes him. And then the Red Knight sees the sword, can't believe his luck, and he's like, I'm gonna claim this prize. And so he does. So the war must not last long because they come back very quickly, and the princess is horrified she's gonna have to marry the Red Knight. She suspects something awful has happened to her man. So they get married, and the night of the wedding feast, she's so sad, she goes down to the edge of the water and plays the violin like he told her to. Back to our guy who's at the bottom of the ocean with the mermaid. She's like, oh, that's your girl playing that music because she got married to someone else today. You hear that? He's clever. He's like, no, I don't hear it. Can you take me closer? She takes him further up, and she's like, you hear it now? And he's like, no, can you take me closer? And he does this until she finally takes him to land. There, he immediately turns into a bee, which apparently he just couldn't do underwater with the mermaid, and goes into the princess's pocket. And the mermaid just gives up. She's like, well, I lost him, and she leaves. She's not in the rest of the story. So he turns back into a man, and the princess is so happy to see him, but she's like, oh, I just got married to the knight though. What are we gonna do? So she takes him and brings him to the wedding feast where everyone is seated. And she's like, hey, Red Knight, I heard that you can magically change into a lion, a bear, and a bee. And he cannot, but he feels like he has to prove himself. So he tries. Said that he makes faces and buzzes around and hums, but he can't manage to do it. So then she turns to our guy and says, now it's your turn. And he changes into a lion. He springs at the Red Knight and would have killed him if the princess hadn't held him back. So he changes into the bear, changes into the bee, and then finally the king is like, wait, were you the one who fetched the sword? The princess says yes, and they tell the whole story. And it says the next day the Red Knight was hanged as he richly deserved. I mean, he found a sword and lied about it, but compared to the things people often do in these fairy tales, I really don't know that that warranted death. But he really has to die plot-wise because she has married him, and now, once he's dead, they have a new marriage feast for the new prince and princess because our guy marries her. And presumably can still change into those animals for the rest of his life, which honestly would be pretty helpful. Check out my book, Dust Spells, which is a reimagining of a Brothers Grimm fairy tale, The 12 Dancing Princesses. There's consent involved. Low bar! Also check out my podcast, Folk Tales and Fairy Lore. Link is in the bio.